Okay, so I'm going to start with sharing a screen. Here we go. So yeah, like I said, we are coming into a big period of recruitment. We have this talent shortage. The other thing that I'm really conscious of in hospitality, and please don't take any offense, but we are rubbish at recruitment. You know, the feedback that we get from people around, you know, have they got any feedback? Has, you know, they've had a 5-minute interview, they never heard back. You know, it's really poor. And I think as a sector, we need to step up our game, really. You know, if we wanted to attract you know, a better quality of person or a better quality of manager to our sector, we need to get real about our recruitment processes. And certainly from an hourly paid level, I think we've got a lot of work to do. So yeah, I hope that with the next hour, you know, if people can come away with a couple of things that will allow them to do things a little bit differently, then I've reached my goal. Magda, good morning. Do you want to turn your camera off, Magda? Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Sorry, Magda, it's not that I don't want to see your face. So, a little bit about what I want to achieve today. So I want to talk a bit about some of our current recruitment habits, and I'm sure we'll all be in a very similar boat. I know we've got people from lots of different businesses, independent, larger businesses, people who are from Manchester, not from Manchester. So as a group, I think we'll probably all be able to admit that we've got some similar habits. I really want people to understand the business impact of high turnover. I'm going to ask you a question in a moment about what you understand that business impact is, and I'm hoping that you kind of come away from that thinking, right, okay, yeah, I get why this is so important. And I suppose I'd like to leave the session with everybody having some kind of structure to their interview. You know, I think as site managers, it's all too often that we are printing off CVs on the way down to an interview. There's no preparation involved. We're, you know, spending a lot of our time considering what our questions are going to be rather than listening to answers. So really having an understanding of what it is we're looking for. And then, like I mentioned, from a more long-term perspective, you know, we are not great at recruitment as a sector. So I really like to have an impact on that and give people a really credible, quality experience, you know, where we fall in line with other sectors, where people are getting feedback, where you know, people are getting decent interviews and trial shifts. Okay, so that's a little bit about what I want to achieve. I think it's important to say that recruitment is only one part of this puzzle. You know, like I said, I firmly believe it's the most important part, because you know, you can have great training, great menus, great food, great drinks, but if you don't have that person right, it's a waste of time. You know, it really is an uphill battle. But on the flip side of that, what I think is really important to mention is that if you do get these great people, you've then got to look after them. It's not the only part of the puzzle. So if you get a great person, then do a shit induction, you know, that it's a really, you know, you might as well not have got them in the first place. These good people are going to want looking after. So they're going to want quality inductions, quality training programs. They're going to want listening to, they're going to want developing, and they're going to want reward and recognition for what they do. Just what I'd like everyone to do, hopefully you've all got a pen and paper with you, and you can put it in the chat. That'd be really good, actually, if you can put it in the chat. I'd just like you to, let's just spend a couple of minutes, just that top question there. So the impact of high staff turnover on the business. Just whilst I'm on it, our sector has got an incredibly high staff turnover. You know, if you don't measure staff turnover in your business, I would guess that it's over 100%. I think it's only companies that start to measure it that start to see significant improvements on it. My experience of people when they start measuring it is it can be anywhere between 150 to 200%. That percentage is based on, for example, if you have a team of 20 people in your team and over a 12-month period you lose 20 people, that's a 100% turnover. What we will find and what you guys will find is it's not you'll lose every single member of the team. So you might be sat there going, oh, I've got loads of people that stay. 5 years. Well, they might do, but the churn comes from probably a smaller group of between 5 and 10 of them that you just can't keep, and they keep turning over. And many businesses start to put in a bonus scheme when turnover comes less than 100%. But I think what we need to be very clear about is there was a direct correlation between staff turnover and most all of the other measures within the business. So just for a moment, I'm just going to stop sharing that screen, but what is the impact of high staff turnover? So if you can just start to put in the chat for me, and I'll start to read some of them out and see how this goes, about what is the impact on you, on the site, on your guest. It'd be really interesting to know what you guys think. Oh, hang on, I've lost my chat function now. Yeah, reputation. It is, you know, that's a really good one. It's a reputation not only as you from the rest of your team as a hiring manager. You know, your team can get a little bit eye-rolly, can't they, about, oh God, another member of staff. Time wasting, consistency. Oh, they're going so fast. Yeah, product. You know yourself when you get served by somebody who knows their shit, that you're like, yeah, I feel comfortable. You know, I know what I'm doing. Whereas if you get somebody that kind of looks not very confident, they're kind of pouring, you know, they're not working to spec, you kind of think, you know, oh God, I won't go back. Yeah, teamwork, very much so. You know, I was talking to a teacher actually, and they were discussing, you know, where they spend their time with their pupils, and it was a really interesting analogy because what they wanted to do was spend their time getting their B students to A students, and that was impossible. They weren't, you know, the government wasn't letting them to do that. They had to get their D's to C's, and if all you're doing is getting your C's to D's, D's to C's, you're just kind of doing quite boring, you know, induction and basic training. You know, you really want to spend your time as managers, you know, focusing on getting these B people to superstars, and you can't do that if you're continuously training people as they come in. Yeah, cost is a massive one. We'll come back onto cost in a second. Yeah, and that's a very good point. It is the time that it takes to do recruitment. Recruitment, you know, can get quite boring if you're continuing to do it, and you know, every week you're like, oh God, I'm recruiting again. I shouldn't say that, I suppose, as a recruiter, should I? But it's what could you be doing with that time? You know, if you love marketing, if you love, you know, being front of house with your guests, whatever that is, what could you be doing with that time that's not, you know, that's not recruitment? Yeah. So there's any more in that? Have I missed any in the chat? Oh, I thought there was somebody crying then. Yeah, labour cost is interesting because even if somebody is a new starter, they take up a headcount on a payroll. So you have to pay them the same price, the same hourly rate. And so they take up an amount on your payroll. So actually there's just an inefficiency there about how much revenue somebody can take, you know, and that they take up a spot on your team, they take up a seat on the bus. Yeah, and team morale constantly changing faces. And definitely that rolls over into guest experience as well, doesn't it? Okay, on the flip side of that, if just for a moment, just stick me some stuff in the chat about when you've seen low staff turnover. So what starts to happen in your business when you have low staff turnover, when people are you know, have confidence in what they're doing, and they start to have some decent length of service behind them? Scroll down to the bottom. More productive, definitely. You know, that you could track on a graph, you know, on a perfect graph, couldn't you, how long somebody stays and how their sales start to creep up. Yeah, Marie, higher level of service. There's a real confidence, isn't there, of people when they know what they're doing, and they can start to use their own initiative about decisions. They can start to you know, really run with what you've shown them, taking on more responsibilities. Yeah. You know, creeping up into supervisor and other roles. Definitely easy to build a culture. It's very, very difficult to build a culture with new starters. That culture comes from people who have been in the business for a significant amount of time. Yeah, internal development, brilliant. So you start to see, you know, that your life is so much easier, you know, and it is. I'm convinced that this is about, you know, you being able to do your, dare I say it, 40-hour weeks, and you know, take that time off. And you know, our world is moving towards a more well-being, even in hospitality, isn't it? You know, maybe that 40s 50, but it is moving towards that, and you're only able to do that if you can trust your team. If you can't get away from the business, if you've got loads of new starters, you're never going to be able to have the quality of life that you're looking for. Yeah, trust, brilliant, all those great things. Thanks, Dee. You know, it just come when people start to get to a confidence point. Just let me share this. I think it's important to say that people can't help being new starters. You know, when people join the business, they consume value. So this is a graph, quite a geeky graph, about when people, they're sponges when they start, they're taking up your time, they're a drain on resources, they can't help that, but that's what happens when new starters start. And until, you can see on the graph, they start to add more and more value, but they've got to pay that back. So when they start to be trained, which, you know, you could, for different businesses, it'll be different things. You know, we've estimated this to be around 12 weeks. You know, it might be 6 weeks for some places, it might be longer depending on their starting point. But you can see that they need to pay that value back. So what happens a lot is people never get to this break-even point. So they never start really adding true value to your business. Out of interest, what does anybody think the industry, I'll see some numbers in the chat, what does anybody think the industry average is of people that don't get to 12 weeks in hospitality? So people who never make it to their break-even point. Anybody guess as a percentage? How many people don't make it to 12 weeks? I think you might be quite shocked. Oh, well, I'm glad it's not as many as 80, crikey. Okay. The average sits somewhere between about 50 and 60. Crikey, Christy, that's a depressing, that would be a depressing start, wouldn't it? 80% of people don't make it to 12 weeks. We're not that bad. But between 50 and 60 people, and again, if anybody's listening to this thinking, I don't measure this, well, you know, this is quite easy to measure. You can do it through your till system. And it's a really, really valuable measure. It's one of my favorite measures because you can start to see, right, you know, are we making wrong hires, and what point are they going wrong and why? So you can really start to analyze the people that you're taking on. And even if you're in a, you know, one-off small site, you know, if you're taking on people and they're never getting to that break-even point, you know, then something's not going right. Oh, thank you, Christian, for paretoing it for me. Thanks. So about 56%. The best I've seen it get to is around 20%. So you're always going to have that turnover. But I would say if you're listening to this and it's not something you measure, then I would say it's potentially a more important measure than turnover, because it's really an indication of probably how good your recruitment is, how good your induction is, and how good your initial training period is. Okay, one thing we did mention in there, I just want to focus on a little bit more, is cost. What I would like to do, and some of the guys on here I know will have done this before, so you can put a measure in, but if we're taking, let's say, part-time bartenders or servers to 12 weeks, in your business, just maybe spend a couple of minutes writing down some, or if, in fact, just put in the chat the kind of things that it would cost. What kind of costs are we thinking that this might be? Because it'd be good to understand what you're thinking around this. So what kind of costs are there for a start? I'll stop sharing so I can see the chat. What kind of costs did you get to get people to 12 weeks? What kind of costs are in there? There's an obvious one I'll give you, which is payroll. The payroll of getting somebody to 12 weeks is quite significant if they're working part-time. Any other costs that people are happy to share? Uniform is a cost. Yeah, thanks, Estelle. Training, cost of managers, yeah. The management time is huge. Wastage, Yeah, tech resources, mistakes. Yeah, thanks, Josh. So it's significant. I think the biggest costs, if we're looking at the big chunks, are their actual payroll, your time or the trainer's time. Yeah, there's unwritten costs that we don't know, of customers not coming back based on their experience. We do this. I do this exercise on my course, and the costs come back between £1,500 and I got 8,000 last week. I think 8,000 was, some, I don't know what they were drinks they were wasting in their induction, but even if you went down, the average that I've got is over all the courses that I've done, over all the different companies, it comes in around £2,000. So that's £2,000. If you lose 50% of those people before you get to 12 weeks, and if you've got a team of 50, you can start to think about that is a significant cost of my P&L, which is 100% going to affect my bonus. So yeah, something to think about if you don't measure your 12-week turnover. It is quite we started doing it quite some time ago in Revolution, and it was the most complicated to work out because of the you shift the timings along. Anyway, it's doable. Okay, so we've got to a point where I'm hoping that you're all thinking, right, shit, recruitment is really important. I really want to get this right. I think one of the most important things that somebody has mentioned, and I've felt it in the teams that I've worked on, and I feel it now, when it's not right, it is the impact on the rest of the team. It's massive. And if you're working in a team between 10 and 20 people, that one bad egg is so significant. So it's really important that we get it right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about process. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Oh, does this all do it in little individual things? So that's handy. So one thing that is important that I think if people don't have is some form of structured process within their site, within their business. But I know we've got people on the call who work for much bigger businesses, and they'll be laughing, thinking, of course they've got a process. But we have got some people from independents that, one-off sites that might think, actually, we do it slightly differently each time. But like I said, the amount of feedback that we get from candidates who have never heard back from an interview, I mean, that is, yeah. And it's not, I know it's not because people don't want to, to hear back or want to be unkind, or, it's because they forget. And when somebody mentally moves out of your brain space, you guys have got so much on that you just forget. But having this process in place and having some kind of structure in there will allow you not to forget. I think it's important to say that this doesn't need to be you doing all these steps. If you're a general manager, if you're whatever level of manager you might be, this is a really good, there's elements of this process that are a really good way to develop your more junior team. So this might be supervisors might do advert writings, or they might do telephone screens, they might do kind of template letters and emails back to people. So just very briefly touching on adverts. I mentioned adverts there. I'm making it sound like we're really bad at everything, but we're not. But we do seem to be quite bad at advert writing. People mistake, I think, advert writing and job descriptions. So job descriptions are the tasks that everybody needs to do within the role. They're quite mundane. They're, the language used in a job description is quite corporate and quite business-like. An advert really is, it's a piece of marketing, isn't it? It should be a piece of beautiful copy that is attracting people to your business. Certainly when I do job adverts, I start everyone from scratch. So there's very little templating. And I know depending on how many you're doing, that is difficult, but it's just a mindset of that this piece of work is important enough to me to spend my time on. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you write a great advert, then you will come across looking like you're a great employer. 95% of people are reading adverts on their phone. So it needs to be really phone friendly, and people read in a C format. So 3 or 4 lines at the top, a list of what they might be doing in the role. And so it's not a job description. It's in some ways it is, obviously, but it's what they will be doing, but it's got to be exciting. And then along the bottom, some more text. But I think, it's not an advert writing course, and I haven't got the time to go into detail, but I think by just focusing on an advert and writing something that sounds really good, it is going to be worth your while. I think it's important to talk. People talk a lot about what experience people need, where do people really, if I read an advert and said you need to be a bartender for 2 years and I've only been a bartender for 1 year, will I not reply? Probably not. So I feel as though you're wasting your words if people talk about what experience you need. Sod that. Let's talk about what they'll be doing, and let's try and get people really attracted into the into your role. And it should reflect, your brand and who you are. And if you're Junkyard Golf, that language is going to be very different to if you're the Ivy. But more often than not, adverts look fairly similar, and it confuses me as to why. Okay, stop banging on about adverts because I'm conscious of time. Okay, so screen share. One thing that else is I want to pull up on this. If you are not telephone screening your candidates before somebody comes in, I think that's a schoolboy error. If you're spending your time interviewing, your ratio, I think, should be either 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 in terms of people that I meet face to face and offer a job to. If it's higher than that, if you're seeing 10 people and only offering 1, you're interviewing too many people, so you've not filtered them out further down the line. So telephone screening is really important. Again, that could be delegated to somebody else in the team, but it allows you to start seeing behavior, allows you to start seeing how people communicate, whether people come back to you. It might cut out a load of people. If you've booked 10 interviews in and only 4 turn up, you might have known that because they never called you back for the interview screen. So it's just about being super efficient and giving, putting, I suppose, a barrier in, because your time is so precious when it comes to interviewing. Final thing I'll mention on this screen, please, everybody, well, even if it's an auto response for a CV, whatever, or if it's a templated response, going back to people is really, really crucial. And it's all about your how you are as an employer and how your employer brand, how you come across to people. And if you're not going back to candidates, then you will start to be known as someone that people don't want to work for. Okay, how have we done half an hour already? So let's jump on to before an interview. One of the things I want to mention here is timely recruitment. So what I mean by that, the biggest challenge that our industry has is I think why we get recruitment wrong is because we do it at speed. We do it for a Saturday night because we've got nobody, we've had 3 people phoning sick, we've got nobody left that can do it. So we start recruiting on a Wednesday. We interview 3 people, 1 of them has to get the job because we need somebody for Saturday. And, all of a sudden you've not got this great choice of people. You're forced to make a decision. There's a lot of, well, let's just give them a go. And that's not good enough. So this timely recruitment is, putting in a space every week, 2 hours a week, 1 hour a week, whatever that looks like, and continuously interviewing, whether you've got one site, well, that's GMs, if you're general managers, whether you've got a team of 20, just do that every week, whatever it is, Monday afternoon, 4 o'clock, when you finish your stocks, let's do an hour of interviewing. If you're communicating effectively with those people, people don't mind if you say, okay, I'm sorry we've not got anything right now, but I'd really like to come back to you in a couple of weeks' time, if that's okay. So you're talent banking them. This timely recruitment allows you to make better hiring decisions and not kind of panic buying, as it were. So that's a really important point. Okay. Screening process we've spoken about, great adverts we've spoken about. I'm just going to jump on to referencing. Trick on referencing, I don't think that we do it for hourly paid roles. You might know somebody in the industry. One thing that I would advise for referencing is to, it's quite obvious that if you say to somebody, can you give me the name of your reference? They're going to give you the name of somebody who is a quality reference, okay? They're going to give you the name of their mum, their best mate, their supervisor that they loved. No one's going to give you a shit reference. But turn that conversation slightly is to say, can I take a reference from your previous general manager? So you're taking control of it. It's a small point, and I'm sorry if I'm teaching people to suck eggs, but you're taking control of it. You're saying, can I get that reference? You might not take the reference, but you'll then start to see if somebody does start to go, well, maybe not actually because I got fired. Then you'll start to see maybe some red flags around. So I'm not saying that you must take references for all people. Obviously, it's best practice, but I understand the time constraints. But that would be one trick to ask people who, if you can take a reference. Okay, so our job as interviewers is to predict how people will perform in our roles. In an ideal world, we'd have a time machine to go back to how they behaved in other roles previously, or we'd trial shift them for 3 weeks and see what happened, but we can't do that. So all we can do is interview people. I know we can trial them as well, but we can try and find out what it is, predict how they might perform. And job performance is based on a few things. It's based on knowledge and skills, and we've spoken about that. And as an industry, at hourly paid level, we tend to focus potentially too much on that. I would like to see people moving away from that and giving more people the opportunity who don't have, who haven't been cocktail trained or who haven't got any hospitality experience and maybe coming in from another sector, but they've got great behaviour. And so that is just, it's only when you've got quality interviewing that you can start to see that behaviour, and therefore you can start to kind of untick some of the knowledge and skills boxes. So this is Lauren. There are patterns in Lauren's behaviour. So how she has been probably from around a teenager, she will be now. There are big life events that do change people's behaviour, but as a rule of thumb, it tends to stay the same. I'm a positive person now, and I was always positive. I don't like detail, and I've never liked detail. So there's things in my jobs that if all my bosses spoke to each other, they would go, yeah, definitely, that's what she was like, that's what she was like. So we can start to understand that if Lauren was always late to her previous job, if Lauren took issue with her manager in her previous jobs, it's likely, and this is about our best chance of getting it right, it's likely that will happen again in the future. The reason this is quite a nugget of information for interviewing is that many interviewers talk about the future. So they talk in future tense. What will you bring to this team? What would you do if you joined us? And of course, it's hypothetical what somebody's answering. They may not be trying to pull the wool over your eyes purposefully. They might actually think that that's what they are. But it's not good enough. We need to know, our best chance is looking back to see how somebody has behaved before. If we are able to recreate the past, we can start to see patterns in that, and then we can visualize what future performance is going to be like. And it's not going to be perfect, but we're building a picture, and we're trying to improve our chances of making correct hires. The thing about talking in the past is that it's harder to lie as well. So, for example, if you were taking on a bar manager, and you ask the bar manager, tell me what you would do if there is a stock problem. So in their mind, they know what they would do because they've been trained. So they'll say, well, I would do this. I would create wastage sheets. I would stop comp allowance. I would. So their language is future. It's what they would do. If your question is tweaked to tell me about a time when you've had a stock problem and what did you do, their brain goes a different way. Their brain goes into the past. So they're then thinking about, okay, what did I do? So it's harder to lie, but it also sends them in a different path of they're more likely to tell you what actually happened. When people are talking about the future, it may be what they do. So for example, you know, if I asked you in your site, look, if a customer fell over and cut themselves on glass, you know, what would you do? Well, I would stay calm. I'd go and find a, you know, first aid box. I would ask security. I'd phone an ambulance. Now, that's what you think you would do. Actually, when it came to it, a customer fell over, smashed glass up, blood everywhere. You totally panicked. You were running around like an idiot, not knowing what the hell to do. So that's an example of it. Might not be, you know, it might be what you think you're going to do, but it might not actually be that. So it's much better to ask somebody about the past and what they have done previously. So when we look at, and I'm sorry, I'm flying through this, conscious of time. When we look at recruitment, there's 3 things that we need to have for our recruitment process. We need to know what we're looking for. So we have to have this model of what outstanding looks like in our business. We need interviewing skills that draw out the facts, and we need a measured and structured evaluation process. So let's think for a minute about this model, and it is different in different sites. So for example, if you're in a late night boozy bar, resilience might be a skill that you must have. If you're in a really nice brunch, I don't know, PKB type venue, you may not need as much resilience because you're just dealing with different you know, customers and different experiences. If you can just put in the chat for me just some words that describe your best people in your site, that'd be really useful. So what is it that your people are? What characteristics do they have that make them great? Honesty, yeah. Adaptability, positivity, reliable, yeah. Great characteristics. Personable, charismatic, confident. Empathy, yes. Yeah, passion for the product, committed, upbeat, welcoming, quick learners. Oh, quick learners is good because that's yeah, difficult to tell in an interview. Yeah, consistency, genuine. Yeah, genuine is yeah, genuine is a good one. It's difficult, again, hard to see in an interview. Team players. So yeah, so they'll be an ambassador for your brand. Flexibility, yeah, you want that person, you know, the person on your team where you phone and they're on a day off and they'll say they'll come in for you. Oh God, you just want 10 of them, don't you? Creativity, initiative. So you can start to see that this is a model of what you want. This is what you want from people. And it's our job as interviewers to find those traits. But everybody says they've got them because they're prepared for the interview. They've spoken to their mum the night before and said, oh, let's talk about my strengths and weaknesses. And they'll say, oh, well, say that you're flexible, say that you're creative, say that you've got initiative. But that's not enough for us. It's not denying that they might be or might not be, but it's not enough. We need to have evidence for that, basically. But these are common traits of people within your business, and they are it's what you need within your business. If I just share my screen again, so I'm glad you're all coming up with the same things. So some of the people on the call might recognise some of these ones. These are from a well-known Manchester operator. My advice would be to create what your model looks like. So whether it's you that's recruiting, whether it's it'll be fairly standard across your business, even if you've got different types of sites. This is behaviour. So you know, even if you've got a small deli business and then a big restaurant, you know, the behaviours will be fairly similar. So you can start to create this model, and it might be 5 or 6 things that you look for. If you're really clever, you will appraise against these things as well. So your appraisals will incorporate these things, because if we're recruiting people based on initiative, it would then be unfair to completely change, you know, what we're judging, what we're kind of assessing them on or appraising them on. So there tends to be a link between what we're looking for and how we're developing people. So there's some key points there, and these are traits that people will have had for a significant amount of time, and so it's our job to find them. So key elements of your interview: a model of what outstanding looks like. So within Nell's Pizza, this is what I need. I need these 5 things, and this is what I'm going to recruit for. A questioning technique that allows you to see that behavior. So you're delving into the past to see whether you can find that behavior, and then an evaluation process. So quickly talk about questions. My observation of interviewers is that they scratch the surface. So they ask questions, for example, like, tell me what your strengths are. And somebody will say, you know, I'm passionate, I've got initiative, and they write them down and you know, as if it's a kind of ticked off, yeah, they are these things. So, but you know, we know that objectivity is impossible. Of course, people are going to have those opinions of themselves, so we need evidence for that. So our questions want to be an analytical approach. We want to make people feel very comfortable. And I think if you're going on this machine gun kind of quick fire questions, you feel awkward, you're thinking of your next question, somebody's, you know, kind of doesn't get the opportunity to say all the things that they want to say. So we really want to be asking these kind of big open questions that delve into somebody's past. It's a little bit like a child, where we're kind of saying, why, tell me more about that, why, what happened? And so if somebody's, you know, tell me, for example, let's say, tell me about a time when you've had to resolve a complicated customer complaint, and they'll tell you the story about it, and they might go into detail, but if they don't, it's really crucial that you start to really dig deep on this point. So, well, tell me a bit more about that, and why do you think that happened, and did you you know, seek anybody else's opinion? And the further down you dig into a scenario that happened, the more likely you are to get behavior. And you won't get that from top level questions of just moving from one question to the other. You've really got to start to dig deep. So I'll give you another example. Managers tell us quite a lot the impact that they've had on a business. So I've improved a business I improved food sales by 10%. Oh, brilliant. Wow. I go back to my director and say, they improved food sales by 10%. So what we need to know is, did they really, was it their actions that improved food sales, or was it a new menu coming in, or did the whole company improve by 10% and we're taking that on the chin as our achievement? So we need to know, okay, tell me more about that. What did you do? How did you do it? Who did you work with on that? What results did you get? What did you reflect on that, and would you have done anything differently? So really, you know, that whole piece might be 10 minutes long in your interview, but it's really important that you get to that behavior. There she is, my favorite. Seeing yourself as a detective. So this is an awful slide, but it's just about kind of digging down and making sure that we're not scratching the surface. We are really going down and getting this kind of gold, which is behavior. A little bit there on questions. Obviously, we know about open questions. We know not to, you know, ask somebody closed questions. You know, tell me a bit about tell me about, you know, it's a great question. It's one of the best. Tell me about a time when, and then we've got these kind of probing questions, which is, tell me a bit more about that. How did that happen? Oh, that's interesting. And you can kind of end up, you've got to be cautious of your tone. If your tone is wrong in this, you will sound like a detective, and nobody's going to tell you much if you do. If your tone is inquisitive and interested and oh, this sounds really interesting, I really want to hear more about that, intrigued, then you will start to get maybe things, you've maybe lulled people into a bit of a sense of security that, you know, you're really cool, I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. And suddenly you found out that they, you know, didn't get on with their manager, and, you know, you really want to know a bit more about that. Follow-up questions are about filling in any gaps. There are sections of an interview where you will see behaviour. So the behaviour, so if we're talking, for example, let's say organisation as a behaviour, you will see that in different parts of somebody's life. If somebody is organised if education is relevant, I think for your guys, if we're looking at hourly paid roles, because it's not that long ago, somebody asking me about my education, it's probably not that relevant, but education is relevant to the level that you're looking at. So you will see, for example, organisation within education. You will see, you know, what kind of behaviours does that, what does that look like? Well, it looks like, you know, when I looked at 10 universities and visited them all and had a spreadsheet for them, and, you know, was really kind of diligent in how I made my choices. In friends and family, you might be the organised one with the calendar of birthdays and the address book and all those kind of things that organised people have. In work, you know, you can start to see organisation in work, of how you plan and process your work. And then in your hobbies, you can see that. So what you're doing is looking for patterns throughout different areas of people's life. If somebody wasn't organised once, that's not enough. You know, we can't just say, you know, they're not organised. We've got to see patterns in their behaviour, and that's our job as interviewers, to see it across different elements of their life. You'll see the bottom right of this slide, it says this job and the reality check. More often than not, if you like somebody in an interview, you want them to look like you, and so you're selling them a job, you know, you're selling them a bit of a dream, and if that dream is not real, then, you know, you've got a problem before 12 weeks. So I think it's really important to be saying to this point, look, I need to tell you that you're going to be cleaning toilets at 3 a.m, that you're going to be cleaning up sick, you know, 3 or 4 times a night. You know, I'd be tempted to undersell it, you know. You've got to give the grim reality of what this job might look like, and then anything else is a bonus. So just making sure that, you know, you are being honest about what your job actually looks like. And for example, the hours, you know, if somebody's looking for full-time hours but you can only offer them 20, that's not going to last very long. So however much you like them, there's a real kind of honesty piece in this part of the interview. Okay, so again, some of you might recognize this. This is something that you can create for your site. I'm happy to send this out to anybody. It is, you can see along the top your model of what performance looks like at the top, so you can have all that. And then you can start to build questions and start to build a grid that people within, you know, so that you're streamlining your interview so that everybody that joins your business will have gone through the same interview. Following your this part should be easy. If you've done a solid enough interview, if you've been looking for behaviour through the different sectors of somebody's life, then this bit should be really easy. It should be a conversation. Now, we'll come on to best practice in a second, but I believe that interviews should be done in 2s as a minimum, because this is very difficult to evaluate on your own. So you can start to build something that looks a little bit like this. So, okay, this is the competency or the characteristic that I'm looking for. This is the evidence that I've got to prove that. And what you're doing is just making sure that you're just making better decisions. You're not making them based on what somebody looks like, or whether somebody, you know, you're not making them based on a gut feeling. You're making them based on evidence that you found during the interview. And if you don't find this evidence, then let's say no. Tips. If one thing changed as a result of you spending this hour listening to me bang on about recruitment, then if you're unsure, it's a no. So if you have doubts, then let's not take them on. One of the key reasons for our high staff turnover in our sector is because we give people we do this kind of sink or swim, or this, let's give them a chance. Let's just see. Nothing to lose. Let's get them on Saturday night, see how they get on. That really is something that needs to stop in our industry. We really need to be making educated recruitment choices. So not this give them a chance. It's not fair. And it doesn't do, as we know, your business any good. What you should be at the end of your interview is really excited. You shouldn't want it to finish. You should probably want to have a beer with them. You should want to tell the rest of the team about them. And if you don't feel like that, maybe they're not the right person. But you can only behave this way if you're doing timely recruitment, if you're not panic recruiting for the weekend. So this is only going to work if you've got time to recruit. Nobody's perfect. So there are obviously things that can develop around, somebody, you can put coping mechanisms in place. If somebody isn't organized, what can they do to try and improve that? And then this excellence piece right to the end, making sure that communication is great. I think I said it earlier on in the course, but how you do anything is how you do everything. If your comms are crap after the interview, no offer letter, no contract, no, it's not good enough. So making sure that you're great right to the end. Tiny bit on best practice, then we'll have some questions. Glad that went quick. So use this technique. So looking the technique that we've got around making sure that you've got a telephone screen system in place, making sure that you are making assessments around characteristics that you're looking for, and making sure that we're using past performance to predict future performance. I would say that there'll be a correlation between if there is a GM, or if it's in the kitchen, a head chef, or if you're an owner operator, the owner, that person needs to be involved in this recruitment. It doesn't matter how much they're involved, really, if they do a sign off at the end, if they do a 15-minute and a deputy's done it, but it's so important that the entire thing of recruitment can't be passed down to an assistant or a deputy. It's too important. So many times I see people taking phone calls, can I have the keys? Can I, sorry, there's someone coming to see you, license in here, but uninterrupted. If that means going off site, go off site. But it's, people have come down to interview you, give them 30 minutes of your time, they deserve it. And it's all about building an impression of you as an employer. I'll challenge you to make your interviews last 30 minutes. If somebody isn't right, I think they could probably get away with 15 minutes. But if you're on the fence, or if you love them, then 30-minute interviews should be best practice. And we've spoken a little bit about referencing. Okay, so conscious of time, I am going to, hang on a second, I was going to, 1 second, sorry. What I am going to ask now is, in fact, what I'll do questions first. Has anybody got any questions? I know that was very quick fire, firing through everything I know about recruitment in an hour. So, but please, if you have any questions, let's take a couple of questions. What kind of things do you ask for in reference? Yeah, great question. Look, people are really funny about giving references, aren't they? Most bigger companies now will say just dates. I wouldn't take that as a reflection of the candidate's performance, because it's just a policy that people put in. It's an annoying one. If you can get through to somebody directly on the phone, then anybody can have a copy of our reference form if they want. I can send it through. It just asks about the different behaviours that we look for and ask people to rate them. So results-driven organisation, culture fit, and we ask about attendance. We ask about sickness. Yeah, so I can send a copy of that to you so you can have a look at it. Do you think COVID not meeting people in person has an effect? No. I mean, God, yeah, of course it does, doesn't it? I think that will start to come to an end. I think it's very difficult to see exactly what you want to see on a Zoom. This is difficult. This is normally done in a training room, and I can see people's faces and interact with people, and this is hard. But so it's going to be the same in an interview. What do you think the new wave adverts using videos and yeah, people keep asking me about TikTok, and I don't know. I'm so scared of it. I think that interestingly enough, we've got to Gen Z are. If you're recruiting Gen Z candidates, then I would start to look at. There's lots of surveys done around what motivates them and what are they looking for. So you can don't presume that it's what I saw a job advert the other day, for example, that said a company benefit was a Christmas party. And actually, I was talking to somebody else about it, and they were saying, look, we do a Christmas party, and 30% of, we only get 30% of our team there because loads of them don't drink. And, you know, the Generation Z is quite an interesting generation. So please make sure that you're doing your research into what actually constitutes a benefit and what they actually want in their recruitment process. What do they want from their job? You know, and making sure that we're appealing to that rather than appealing to what we think they want. Do you think the skill shortage situation is changing at the moment due to the large numbers of team members losing jobs and businesses closing? Do you think the skill shortage situation is changing? Yeah, I mean, the last 12 months is just absolutely horrific, isn't it, for everybody? Do I think people have left hospitality? Without a doubt, but do I think that most people, if they're hospitality through and through, will come back? I think they will, and I think we have to look beyond our own sector and, you know, really start to step up our game in hospitality and making sure that we are matching other sectors' benefits, you know, matching well-being. You know, number of hours is really high up there on someone's list, and you know, the drivers of people have changed. And, you know, we've got to really look at salaries and all these different things to get people back into our sector, definitely. I think there's going to be a lot of work done. You'll see a lot of work from people like Springboard and UK Hospitality over the next kind of couple of years on how do we get the people back into hospitality. Have I missed a question? So the one from Steve there. What do you think? What are your overall thoughts on group? Oh, I love group interviews. I love assessment days. I think they're a part of a bigger recruitment process. They can't be at the expense of a behavioural interview because, yes, you're looking for the same things. So, for example, in assessment day, if you've got passion, initiative, drive, you're looking for those in an assessment day, the same as you are an interview. But I think they've got to be an addition to an interview, not instead of. I've just seen somebody's in the waiting room. I left him in there the whole time. Sorry. Hang on, I've got another new message. Is there a way of avoiding no-shows for interviews? Yeah, right. So definitely, I think that the more barriers you put in place for interviewing, the better. So if you have an application form, then that'll filter out a certain amount of people. If you're doing a telephone screen, you know, all the time you're understanding how somebody communicates with you and the quality of their communication and their drive to get your job. So I'd really make sure that you're putting in those steps before you kind of get to interview stages. It's a massive waste. It's a huge problem in our industry, no-shows, you know, and I hate to say it, and I don't mean to target chefs, but chefs are horrendous at interviewing. What I would say is, if somebody is causing you an issue before they've got to interview, so they've not texted you back, we give chefs 24 hours to come back to us. No, we give chefs 3 days and we give other people 24 hours because people are on their phone all the time, so there's no excuse. If somebody's not communicating effectively with you before their interview or before they've got the job, sack them off. You know, it's a red flag. People need to be, if you're employing great people, they're great all the time. So please pick up these red flags and don't try and, you know, let's not give people second chances. Really, it's not good enough, because that's when we cause ourselves problem further down the line. You know, no one, let's look at the probability of somebody having a car accident on the way to an interview. It's very, very small, but it happens so often, and I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. God help the person who does. Sorry. How would you recommend balancing the benefits of low turnover with the need to utilise and welcome short-term? Yeah, it's very difficult with students, isn't it? I think, look, you've got your role is to protect your business and do right for your business. If that means that it's very difficult for you to employ students, that I would, you know, but there are also questions within an interview that you can talk to students about. So, you know, how do you feel about this? What, you know, how would you manage your studies? You know, how many hours a week are you studying? How can you do this job and how can you get in at 4 a.m. and get up at 9 a.m. I don't think that's possible. Are you sure? You know, so there's specific questions around students, and I think that honesty piece is really important as well. Look, you know, you will have to work Christmas. You know, I really don't want to let each other down. That, you know, I need to tell you now that you will be working on Christmas Eve, and let people manage themselves out of the process, so that if they don't want to do that, then that, you know, they're not right for you. So I think it's just about being really honest, and about trying to you know, if somebody says to you, for example, or if you say to them, how you know, are you okay getting home at night? Yeah, fine, absolutely fine. Of course they're going to say that, they want the job. But the slightly different question is, how will you get home at night? And then they've got to start thinking, oh shit, actually there's no bus to mine at that time. I can't do it. So hopefully that helps, Jess. Okay, we are at 12 o'clock. I thank you very much. I know that was super fast. Yeah, thank you for joining. You've all stayed on the call, so hopefully that was okay. If anybody has, oh, one more thing I need to tell you about. 68 Jobs is I'm not selling you anything, don't worry. It's a free jobs board that we are launching in Manchester on the 31st of March. So if anybody does want to post their job adverts for free and create their own little ATS system for their site, because they can store all their applications in one place and create a talent bank, then please watch out for that. We're starting to put the marketing stuff out there. I hope you really enjoyed it. You know where we are if you need anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions on email afterwards. So thank you guys, and have a brilliant day. Good luck with your reopening, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Oh, nice messages.